The AEA bill.
AEA bill.
Three things are in that bill. One is SSA, which is state supplemental aid, which is the annual increase to schools. That was pegged at 2.5%. The House was at 3%, the governor was at 2.5%, the Senate had passed the bill at 2%, while we wanted it to be 3% through the process of negotiation and 2.5%. Also in there is an additional approximately $80 million for teacher salaries, which is very important. And when you add those two numbers up, 2.5% SSA and the money that went into that bill for teacher salaries, if you were to put that all into your general aid or SSA, would be about 4.6% increase. So it's about $180 million of new money for K-12, which would have been the biggest, if it was all in SSA, which it wasn't, would have been the biggest increase in SSA, I believe, this century. So there was a substantial amount of money that went into that. But I'll get to the AAs, but the teacher salary thing was to, over 2 years, we'll raise the minimum teacher salary in the state of Iowa to $50,000. So that's going to be hugely beneficial to our rural schools who have trouble recruiting teachers because of the level of pay. At $50,000, Iowa will rank as the fourth highest state in the nation in terms of beginning teacher salaries. There's also money in there that will go into what we call the salary compaction, about $22 million that goes into TSS, which is Teacher Salary Supplement, which helps with your veteran teachers, because you have school districts where somebody might have been teaching for 5 years and are only making $51,000, and now this new teacher comes in and gets $50,000 right off the bat. You have to be able to try to adjust. It'll take a couple of years to make that adjustment to make sure the veteran teachers are compensated given the new minimum salary. There's also $14 million in there, which is very, very, very important. That goes to paraeducators or the people in the classification of paraeducators, and that's important for special education because your paraeducators, by and large, spend their time in the special ed classrooms. And so that would give them an opportunity to raise their salaries so they can make more than McDonald's employees do. And so that was pretty important. As for the AEA bill, forgive me, this will take a minute or two. Two things to remember. One, this isn't an issue that we brought up by choice. This was an issue brought up by Governor Reynolds. Her aim and goal was good. Our special ed test scores are lower than they should be. There are reasons for that, including the tests that they use and how we assess those test scores. But nonetheless, she wanted to raise those salaries. The way she went about it, in my opinion, was wrong. She didn't engage the stakeholders. She engaged a small group of people, and they came up with a proposal which didn't have much chance. Having said that, what changed? Well, I've worked with 3 different governors, and when a governor has a priority, you will address it. It's just that simple. You may not want to, and I get emails saying, well, just stand up to the governor. Well, we did stand up to the governor. Her bill would have destroyed the AEA system. This bill does not. I know the AEA system in and out. I didn't love this bill. It was hard to vote for, but the flip side of it, I think, would have been worse, and that would have been a governor going across the state for the next 8 months trashing the AEAs, which is what she is doing, saying they're not doing their job, and I think that would have been extremely difficult for the AEA systems to sustain. Please keep in mind, because people don't understand this, the AEAs do not teach special education. Your local school districts have their special education teachers. The AEAs are there for support, and at the same time, the Department of Education, despite their protestations, they have power over the AEAs. They have more now, but there is plenty of blame to go around for the special ed test scores. So in the end, the governor wanted to have 100% of the special education money, which totals over $500 million, of which about $150 million is state funding, to go directly to the school districts to spend however they wanted to on special education. That would have, I believe, destroyed the AEA system. The governor didn't believe that, but that's what I believe. The Senate passed the bill, even though they knew there would be another version of it, that 90% of the money would go to the school districts, with 10% going to the AEAs. In my mind, even though it's a tough vote, what we passed was 90% is mandated of that money will go to the AEAs, has to be spent at the AEAs. Has to be spent at the AEAs, the same as it is now, 90% of that money. The other 10% will go to the school districts. The school districts then will have a choice. My preference would not have been to have done that, but 10% is about $15 million statewide. That will not destroy the AEA system. That will not substantially disrupt the special education services across the state. Most of those school districts are going to take that 10% and spend it with the AEAs, because like for Underwood, it's like $40,000. what can they do with that? They're likely to spend it with the AEAs. The positive part of that 10% though is that AEAs and the school districts get together and then they decide on services. Now the school districts will be able to have a little bit more say. I'm not saying I don't have any say. It works pretty well right now. And they might say, well, with my $40,000, I'd like to have a little more mental health counseling or whatever it may be. I may want more speech pathologists, whatever. The AEAs will have to respond to that. So it isn't going to destroy the system. I prefer the way it was, but 90-10 split, in my mind, as somebody who ran the AEAs for 15 years, it ensures the survival of the AEAs for another 10 or 15 years because they can make this work. And again, most of that $15 million, I think, not all of it, but I think a lot of it will go to the AEA anyway, and they'll be able to maintain services. We did make one mistake in the bill, and we have to correct it, and my leadership has said we will correct it. The media and technology money, which is about $32 million of property taxes that we've been collecting since 1974, and then there's about $33 million of property taxes that was established in 1974, goes for educational services like speech therapy and crisis counseling, mental health, and things of that nature. In our original bill, the governor was insisting 100% of that go to the school districts and let them have the choice. The AEAs in the original House bill were neutral on that because they say we can compete with private entities. We're pretty good at this, and they are. We can compete with that. In the bill, and it was an oversight, at least in my view, at least in the House view, and we're going to correct it in another bill, we let that money go to the school districts, which was something we had decided to do. But the language said that they can spend it on any general fund appropriation. That's a mistake. We need to change that. It needs to say, you get the money, but you have to spend that money in the areas of media and technology or educational services. Once we make that correction, then that money, I think most of it will continue to go to the AEAs if they're doing a good job. If not, they may hire a private vendor. But the vast majority of what the AEAs do, 80% of special education, the 90-10 split will be a difficult transition, but I believe those services will be maintained. And then the last two quick things is one, it does give the DE a little more insight and control. We established a division of special education in the Department of Education with 13 new people. Before 2012, they had a division, but they didn't have any money, so they eliminated the division, and the AEAs took over that oversight, and now the Department of Education is going to have 13 people to help oversee the AEAs. The AEAs are okay with that. Hopefully it'll result in better communication. And then lastly, we insisted, and a lot of people would say, why didn't you just do a task force? And my answer is because I got to deal with the governor who has priorities, and we have to make some, and people can shake their head, but that's the reality. That's the way it unfortunately works. We have to deal with the governor. We have a task force. We'll have the right people around the table, and I think what they will do is they have to report back to the legislature by next January, and they will come back and they may tell us to make some changes, or they may say things are good, or they may say you made a mistake and go back. But that's what we should have started out with. That's not the way it rolled out. We dealt with it, and that task force will meet. I hope to be on that task force. I was on the last one in 2011, and then we'll take it from there. So there you go.